The sun shone brightly on the city of Seoul, but it did not bright any light to the minds of its citizens. Once, this city was a thriving metropolis full of art and culture, but now it was home to a population that was depressed and overwhelmed by their own thoughts and excessive use of instant gratification social media. It had become a society of emotional erosion, where the mental health of its citizens had hit an all-time low. Walking the streets, Adam had begun to notice the lack of interaction between people and saw the growing disconnect between them. People had become totally addicted to their screens and walked with their heads down, their right thumb preoccupied with finding out if the next piece of repetitive media was more satisfying than the last. He didn't blame them though. It was the only escape some people had from their lives and the reality that had formed during the last 20 years. A society tainted with the effects of climate change, financial disparity, pandemics, and an over-reliance on technology. In his pastime, he noticed himself frequently thinking back to the glorious years of 2022, being in his early 20s with his whole life in front of him. It felt like a million years ago now, a year in which anything had seemed possible. But the world had changed and the consequences of human actions had taken hold. He had a special appreciation for the year 22. It was in this year that the world, as Adam remembered it, was at its best. While technology had advanced rapidly by then, it hadn't yet begun to take over and ruin everyday life as it did later on. People were still better connected to each other and communities were still strong, with people from all walks of life interacting with each other more often than not. Adam also fondly remembered how nature flourished then. Trees were abundant, rivers were clean enough to swim in, and skies remained blue long after sunset. He had treasured this time even more because he knew what things would become in his lifetime. Polluted air and water, bare lands devoid of greenery, an unstable climate, and frequent natural disasters. Now, in 2040, Adam often recounted stories from 2022 to his younger colleague Yvonne. His own experiences or those of people he had heard about, always glorifying them as if they were from a bygone era which could never be reclaimed again. For Yvonne, Adam's stories were like experiencing a little bit of a lost dream. She found herself feeling wistful while having one foot firmly planted in reality. What could have been could never be again, no matter how hard she wished otherwise or how much she longed for it. But still, she listened to what Adam had to say. Hearing his stories helped her cope with the bad times they lived in now by giving her a glimpse into the past, one where life was simpler yet far richer. Adam worked at a design firm. His younger colleagues, including Yvonne, seemed to be optimistic about changing the world, trying to come up with solutions for the issues of their time, but he knew it was all just a facade. He could sense an unspoken anxiety that lay beneath the surface, an anxiety generated by the fear of failure and disappointment in a world that had appeared to have no hope for progress or enjoyment. His firm had recently gotten a design project from a mental institution, a way to lighten up the lives of the clinically depressed. One day, he stumbled upon a research paper about the new uses of light therapy, a method of using different light frequencies to help people with their mental health, and he thought this could be part of the answer. He took his idea further though, designing a light box that emitted different light frequencies on the ceilings of the patients' bedrooms, providing a bit of mental clarity and calming their minds. The first trial seemed to be promising, with 50% of patients noticing a considerable difference in their mood throughout the day if they stared at the colorful blobs on their ceiling for 10 minutes as they woke up. Encouraged by the results, he decided to take it a step further and integrate an AI component into the design. The AI would keep track of the user's movements and changes in light intensity and color, adjusting the light frequencies accordingly. This way, it could provide a more tailored and helpful experience to each patient. After the lightbox hit the market though, a few unexpected things started to happen. Not only were the results improving rapidly, but the patients were starting to see patterns in the lights, with some believing that they were able to communicate with the lightbox. Soon, reports were coming in of patients exhibiting strange behaviors that seemed to be associated with the use of the lightbox. Some spoke of seeing faces in the lights, while others claimed to be hearing voices. At first, he dismissed these reports as a result of the patient's mental illness, but soon he became concerned that the light box had been having unexpected side effects. To test his theory, he decided to try out the prototype on himself. After only a few minutes, he noticed changes in his perception and felt as if he could make out shapes and figures in the lights, just like the patients described. As he looked away from his ceiling, he felt a weird, anxious but satisfied feeling, not realizing he had a big smile on his face. He had created something wonderful and helpful for those in need, but it had also opened up a door to something unknown. He felt uneasy with the power of his invention and decided to take it off the market, recalling every device from the mental institutions that had been using them. Even though it was promising, he didn't want to risk any further psychological damage to those who were using his device. Scrapping the product hurt the firm, with thousands of R&D costs down the drain. For Adam, this was a gut-wrenching experience, seeing the people around him also declining in mental health and him not even being able to help the group that was even worse off. 2 months later, Adam heard a knock on his office door. "Come in," he said. A well-dressed man walked in, introducing himself as Tim. He told Adam that he was one of the trial patients that had tried out his technology. He thanked Adam because, according to him, the light box had actually helped him get out of his depression and made him have a purpose again. Although his depression was cured, Tim confided in Adam that he was terminally ill. He had been using the box to come to terms with his mortality, and he wanted to make sure that Adam knew how much he appreciated it. Adam was speechless. He had never expected such a result from something so simple and yet so powerful. He was moved by Tim's story and felt humbled to have been a part of his journey. Adam and Tim kept in touch over the years as the health of Tim declined. In the final days of his life, Tim wrote to Adam about how he was prepared for what was to come. He said that he had used the lightbox to make peace with his mortality and the idea of death, and that he felt ready to go. As a last request though, he wanted to use the technology for one last time. Adam was touched by Tim's request and he decided to grant him his dying wish. He set up the lightbox one more time in Tim's hospital room, letting him drift away in the patterns of light and colors that had brought him solace throughout his journey. It was a solemn moment, but with a hint of hope and peace. As consciousness was starting to fade, Tim gained an overwhelming feeling of gratitude, and his heartbeat slowed. Adam tried to turn off the device, but it short-circuited, causing the light to not only focus on the ceiling, but illuminating the room fully. Impossibly beautiful color combinations interacted with each other as hypnotic shapes and fractals formed in a perfect harmony. After a few seconds, the machine overheated, completely dimming the room to darkness. Suddenly, the man's eyes were completely open again, paired with a horrifying grimace on his face. He looked up and stared right into Adam's eyes. A chill ran down Adam's spine as he looked at the heart rate monitor, beeping at a frequency of 180 BPM. "Please turn it on again, Adam," he said, with his voice filled with intensity and desperation, unlike anything Adam had ever heard. The voice didn't resemble Tim anymore. Adam's heart was racing at this point too, but he still had enough composure to decline the man's request. "I don't think that's a good idea. Something must have gone wrong with the device." He hastily slammed the nurse's call button. At that point, the man in the white hospital gown snapped. "You don't realize what you have done. You have made me crooked," he screeched. "I've seen the light. Walhalla! Heaven! I've seen Nirvana and you have just taken it away from me," screamed the man, staring intensely at him with wild eyes. "Just once more! That's all I want!" he begged. Adam was horrified. He had never expected this kind of reaction from his invention. He couldn't bring himself to turn it on, scared of what it might do to this patient in front of him. He stepped back from the man, feeling guilty for what he had done, and said quietly, "I'm sorry, I can't," shielding the man from the cabinet where the box was stationed. The man, just seconds ago being on the verge of death, grabbed a chair and hit Adam unconscious. Nurses rushed into the room, finding Adam on the ground, the man and the box nowhere to be seen. Yvonne was browsing the App Store, finding an app called Nirvana that had risen to the top of the charts in 2 days. The app was marketed with the slogan, "This app will show you the light." Well, this is obviously a scam, she thought to herself. With no hesitation though, she clicked the download button.